Sefer Yeshayahu, or the book of Isaiah, chapter 8, verse 23, reads as follows. Ki lo mu'af la'asher mutzak la, ka'et harishon hakel, arza zvulun ve'arza naftali. In the former times he, speaking of the Most High, brought contempt to the territories of Naphtali and Zvulun. Continuing, והאחרון הכביד דרך הים, עבר הירדן, גליל הגויים. But in the latter days he will bring great glory to the way that goes by the sea, over the Jordan, and into the Galilee of the Gentiles. Chapter 9, verse 1 continues the thought. Ha'am ha'holchim ba'hoshech ra'u or gadol. The people who walked in darkness saw a great light. Yoshve be'eretz salmavet or naga alehem. Those who dwelt in the land of the shadow of death, they were visited by a great light. Visited by a great light. ובכל זאת, שלום שלום לכם אנשים טובים אהובים שלי, וברוכים הבאים לערוץ הקטן שלי. הערב, on this מוצאי Shabbat, I want to talk to you about holiness, merit, and light. קדושה, זכות, ואור. So, the passages that I just read to you were quoted in Matthew chapter 4, around verse 15, and they were attributed to Yeshua the Messiah. What is this thing with light? Light has always been a symbol throughout the Tanakh associated with the Most High. Light as purity, light as just, okay, tzedakah, righteousness, light as something that's eternal. Also in the Brit Chadashah, light plays a prominent role in the Gospel of Yohanan, in the Gospel of John. So, in this week's parasha, Tetzaveh, light takes a very prominent role, a very prominent role. As a matter of fact, let's just take a look at the opening passages of this week's parasha, found in Sefer Shmot, in the book of Exodus, chapter 27, verse 20, and it reads as follows. Ve'ata tetzaveh et v'nei Israel, and you shall command the sons or the children of Israel, vayikhu elecha shemen zait zach katit, and you will take for you shemen zait, olive oil, zach vekatit, zach meaning pure, katit meaning pressed. And what are you taking it for? It goes on to say, lama or leha'alot ner tamid. You need this olives for the light. When you go up, la'alot, leha'alot, to light, it says ner tamid, to light an eternal candle, an eternal flame, a flame that is to burn perpetually and not to go out. Verse 21, Be'ohel mo'ed michutz la'parochet, in the tent of meeting, ohel mo'ed, in the tent of meeting, michutz la'parochet, outside of the veil that separates and covers the Aron Habrit, the Ark of the Covenant. Asher al ha'idut, okay, which on which is the testimony, and on. At the end it says, Aharon uvanav me'erev ad boker, Aharon and his sons, me'erev ad boker, from the evening into the morning, which is the way a Hebrew day starts, okay, in the culture, from evening to morning. It says, Lifnei Yehovah hukat olam ledorotam me'et bnei Israel. It will be a chok, okay, or a regulation throughout their generations for forever. So you might ask yourself, how do you fulfill a chok, okay, chok, chukim, plural form? How do you fulfill a regulation when you can't, when there is no temple, when there is no eternal flame? Matter of fact, here we are. Here's the object of our discussion. The curious case of the menorah. In this case, I know a lot of people will beat me up about this, right? They know the difference. This is a Hanukiah. A Hanukiah. It's not a menorah. What's the difference between a Hanukiah and a menorah? Okay, a menorah has six bowls, three on one side, three on one side, and the shamash, the servant, shamash, servant in the middle, the one that's used to light each one. If you haven't figured it out, when you look at my videos, when I'm reading and I'm going through pieces of scripture with you, this is what I'm using as my pointer. This is what I'm using as my pointer here. But anyway, so this is a Chanukiah because it has 4 and 4, 8, 1, and 9. Okay, so at any rate, the point that I'm trying to make is how can you keep a regulation for something where you have no temple and you have no menorah? For all we know, Rome has it, or they've melted it down and made grills out of it. Who knows at this point? But this is a question that's been asked plenty of times by the people who have pondered the Torah over the years. And the thought is that the commandment transcends the actual menorah, and that the menorah itself stands for something much bigger, something longer lasting, something eternal. And you and I really briefly are going to touch this and find out, or at least get a starting idea of what it meant. So the first thing, kedusha, holiness, kedusha, kodesh or kadosh, holy, right? Kedusha is the state of being holy. So it's called holiness, excuse me, in that form. What do we know about holiness? Well, I like to think of it as this. You may see it differently. Please comment and let me know. Holiness or kedusha, with respect to Yahuwah, the Most High, Hakadosh Baruch Hu. Holiness is the state of being. That is who He is, plain and simple. Kedusha or holiness for us is something that we strive toward over a lifetime. Okay, because it takes a lifetime within a lifestyle for us to attain that. It's something we're constantly working with. Just like olive oil will not mix with any other liquid that you pour it into, so is the difference between kadosh, holy, and chol, profane. Kodesh and chol are night and day different. It's also said that ben kodesh lechol anachnu chaim, between the sacred and between the profane, is where we all live. We live and work and move out in the world that is profane. But we have a place to run and to hide into when Shabbat comes, because it is sacred time and it's space. Okay, so holiness, we know that it is the essence of who the Most High is. 3 examples, right? Really 3 examples that you can check out. Genesis 28:16 is the first place, right? That demonstrates this holiness, right? It's Yaakov when he has the dream and he sees the sulam, the ladder that goes up to the heavens. He wakes up and he says, Ma nora hamakom hazeh. How awesome is this place? The Most High was here and I didn't even know it. So you remember, he stood up a stone as a matzeva, as a monument. He poured oil on it and he said, this is the very gate. This is a stairway to heaven, the very gates of heaven, he put it. Second place, Isaiah chapter 6, verse 1, the famous theophany in the book of Isaiah, and it starts off with the words, Bishnot Mot HaMelech Uziyahu, in the year that Uziyahu the king died, Va'er'e et Yehovah Ram v'nisa v'shulav mele'im et ha'hechal. I saw the Most High sitting on a throne high and lifted up, and the skirts of his robe filled the temple. A little later on, being caught up in the moment and snapping to it, Yeshayahu realizes how lacking he is, and how profane he is. And he cries out, woe is me, because I'm a man of unclean lips. And of course, the angel brings a coal from the altar, puts it on his lips and makes him clean. Then he's acceptable. Then he's suitable. And then he can be a shaliach. He can be one who can be sent. Who will go for us? I will go for you now that I'm suitable. And finally, last example, Exodus chapter 3, verse 5, when Moshe Rabbeinu is told to take off your shoes. The ground that you're standing on is holy, right? Don't come any closer. Proximity, keep a distance. Don't draw near. And take the dead animals off of your feet. Take off the shoes, okay? So, again, that's just an example of Kedusha, of holiness. Now let's move to merit. Merit, zechut, the concept of zechut. You and I, we have audience with the Most High, bizchut ma'asav shel Yeshua Mashiach. Bizchut, in the merit, ma'asav shel Yeshua Mashiach. In the merit of his works, what he did for us, okay? Bizchut damo shel Yeshua Mashiach. In the merit of his blood that he sacrificed for us. He gave his life in order that we could be clothed, that we won't be naked in front of the Father. Okay, in this parasha also, which kind of speaks to nakedness, we know that the high priest is dressed in this parasha. The high priest Aharon is being installed not only by his brother, but he's also being clothed by his brother and by the people as a whole. All right. And one of the reasons that it says, okay, is that with respect to what Moshe has to do, here's what he's told in Exodus chapter 28, verses 1 and 2. Well, I'm right here. We might sort of read it. It says, Ve'ata hekrev elecha et Aharon achicha ve'et banav. He says, and you will bring or cause to draw near Aharon your brother and his sons, Aharon achicha uvanav. That same word you will cause to draw near, hekrev, is the same word as karban, spelled with a kof, resh, and a vet. Okay, to draw near means to sacrifice. But look at the level of kedusha or holiness that Moshe has that no one else has. Moshe is the one who has been charged with bringing his brother near, bringing his brother into the atmosphere of the air that Moshe has been breathing. He's, up to this point, Moshe is breathing a different air, a completely different stratosphere with respect to Kedusha or holiness than anyone. Why? Because as it says, Velo kam Israel navi ke Moshe. Never again did there arise a prophet like Moshe, okay, who knew, as it said, knew the Most High, panim mul panim, face to face. Of course, we know with the advent of Mashiach, Mashiach is greater than Moshe. But the relationships, as far as just a regular human being, no one has risen like that since Moshe. But now he has the charge to bring Aaron up, okay? And it says that you are to bring them from among mitoch bnei Israel lekunali, okay? Aharon, his sons Nadav, Avihu, Elazar, and Itamar. Okay, and he is to dress them for lechavod ultifaret. Lechavod for glory, ultifaret, and for splendor. These are words that are used for regal matters. These are words that are used that typically describes someone king-like. Could there be that in mentioning Aharon and his clothing and the way that he's being brought up, that there is a remez or a clue alluding to someone else? Let's keep going. In 28, 1 and 2, we just talked about that, clothing them for honor and for splendor, or for glory and for splendor. It also repeats the same thing for the clothing of the sons. Verses 1 and 2 covered the clothing for Aharon. And then verse 40 of the same chapter covers that same expression, lechavod ultifaret, for the clothing of his sons. Verse 41 and 42, Moshe was to place authority on Aharon, anoint and sanctify them, Aharon and his sons, and to cover their nakedness. The clothing had the function of covering their nakedness more than just their flesh. This was a covering of something much more deeper, much deeper. Okay, so merit, or the system of merit, is based on the righteous acts of a tzaddik, or an upright person. Okay, and in the merit of that individual, people can benefit. None different than the Mashiach, none different, no one greater than the Mashiach. Let's keep going. And finally, light. Light. What is the deal with light? Again, it's always been there. Yeshua, as we can see in the opening verses that I read, he is attributed to as being a great light. In Matthew chapter 5, he declares himself to be the light of the world, and he tells us that we too, are the light of the world. What is that all about? Well, you know some of the biblical references. You're very aware of these. But what I want to do also is I want to share with you a little bit of some of the thoughts of those who pondered the Torah for a long time. Before the time of Yeshua, during the time of Yeshua, and even afterwards. And the amazing thing about some of these commentaries, which are told in the form of parables, sound familiar? This is the way the Mashiach taught, but on a much greater, astronomically greater level. But they got thoughts and points across in the form of mashal, of a parable. And I want to demonstrate to you how some of these writings not only back up the Torah, but they're also a witness and a confirmation, and they even back up New Testament writings as well. Hold on to your seats for a second. So now, with respect to light, the elephant, the big glowing bright elephant in the room, is the menorah, okay? What is it all about? With our reading this week, we can also read a parallel in, let's see, the parasha. You can write this down and take a look. Baha'alotecha, which is found, I'm sorry, not Baha'alotecha. Let's see if I'm looking at the right one. Give me 1 second. Yes, I am. So the beginning of Numbers chapter 8, the beginning of Numbers chapter 8 in the parasha known as Baha'alotecha, it gives explicit instructions on when you go up to light the menorah, when you go up to light the menorah, what you should do, how you should do things, X, Y, and Z. Okay? That's one thing. And then in Leviticus chapter 24, Parashat Bahar, Leviticus chapter 24, very interesting how Leviticus chapter 23 chronicles all of the Mo'adim and Chagim, the feasts of the Most High. And when chapter 23 ends, at the beginning of chapter 24, guess what pops up? The menorah, out of nowhere. Let's read the top of the verse really quickly. Leviticus chapter 24. It says, Vaidaber Yehovah el Moshe lemor. And the Most High said to Moshe, right? Tzav et bnei Yisrael ve'yikhu elecha shemen zait zach katit lamaor. The same words. Have the sons of Israel, the children of Israel, bring you olive oil, pure and crushed, for light, laha'alot ner tamid, in order to light an eternal flame. You and I are not eternal flames, brothers and sisters. Aharon and his sons were not eternal flames. The lives of these priests expired and their lights went out. But let's look at who the real eternal flame is. If you take a look at Proverbs chapter 6, verse 23. if you take a look, as soon as I find it, Mishle, at the book of Mishle or Proverbs. Proverbs chapter 6, verse 23, 678. And bingo. It's coming. There I am. I'm slow, but I'm sure you guys. Proverbs chapter 6, verse 23 reads as follows. Check out this parallel. It says, Kiner mitzvah, for the mitzvah or for the commandment is a candle. V'torah or, and the Torah is a light. V'derech chaim tochechot musar, and corrections and reproof is the way of life. Did you catch that? I'll read it again in case you didn't. Kiner mitzvah, for the Torah is a lamp. For the commandment is a lamp. V'torah or, and the Torah is a light. Okay? V'derech chaim tochechot musar. Reproof and correction in this is the way of life. So it's saying, you guys, that the Torah, as we already know, is a way of life, the way in which to walk. Okay, brings reproof and correction. But it parallels the mitzvah, and it mentions only one mitzvah because the entire Torah is considered one commandment. Notice Paul says the commandment is just and holy. He's talking about Shema Israel. The Torah is considered one commandment. So when people start fighting and talking about civil, memorial, ceremonial, all that brouhaha, tell them it's unbiblical. It's unbiblical. Okay, remember, Yeshua even clears this. Remember the young man approaches Yeshua in one of the accounts and he says, Rabbi, ezohi mitzvah gedola b'chol Torah. What is the greatest commandment in all of the Torah? Yeshua answered, Shema Yisrael, Yehovah Eloheinu, Yehovah Echad. That's the first and the great commandment. It covers everything. It covers everything. Okay, so the Torah is one commandment. But the writer of Mishle or Proverbs is paralleling mitzvah, being obedient to mitzvot, okay, and the Torah as a light. There is an association, you guys. There is a parallel. Matthew chapter 25, the parable of the virgins and their oil. Check it out. Clap back. Let me know what you think. Okay, finally, I did promise you really quickly here that we're going to close out on the light, but I want to read some excerpts, again, from those who have pondered the Torah over time. Keep this in mind also with respect to the oil, zach vechatit. So the oil or the olives have to be zach vechatit. The oil has to be pure and it has to be from crushed olives. So we have information from long ago that says that the light for the menorah, the oil, all of the tribes had to present their olives, right, after the harvest. And you had to katit, you had to crush the olive just hard enough not to break the skin and put dregs or particles of the meat of the olive into the oil. But you have to pressure it enough to where you get that first drop. A single drop, you guys, from every olive dropped into a container. And eventually it was all gathered and it was taken and presented to the priest. So crushed and pure without meat or dregs inside of the oil. Right here we see the principles of first fruits in full-blown operation. First fruits. This is how pure the oil. This is the quality of the oil that had to be so that it would burn bright and it would burn clear. A regulation for forever. A regulation for forever. Let's take a look at, again, as I promised, a couple of things written by those who have pondered the Torah. So here is a passage from someone that I've quoted before, Tanchuma, okay, he wrote a commentary on our Torah portion, and I want you to follow what he said. He said, Amar HaKadosh Baruch Hu, this is what the Holy One, blessed be He, has said. Im tadliku lefanai nerot, if you light before me lights, ani me'ir lechem me'or hagadol, I will light, or I will give light to you from the great light. What is the great light? So he's saying to the children of Israel, if you light lights before me, I will give you light from the great light. Okay, he said that in connection with Isaiah chapter 60, verse 19. Let's see really, really quickly what it is that Isaiah chapter 60, verse 19 says. Isaiah chapter 60, verse 19 says this. Ooh, I know I can't see. Stop playing, David. Isaiah 60:19 reads as follows. It's a messianic passage and it's in the future, right? It says, Lo lach or hashemesh leor yomam. You will not need, or there will not be for you, a sun to light you during the day. Ulegana, and for the garden, Adam was in the garden. But anyway, Ulegana hayareach lo ya'ir lach. And in the garden, or for the garden, the moon will not give light for you. V'haya lach Yehuwah le'or olam. But Yud-He Vav-He will be your eternal light. Velohecha letif artecha. And your Elohim will be for your splendor. Again, there is royal speech being used. He will be for your splendor. So there's no sun and there's no moon, because the Most High will be the light forever. Ner Tamid, eternal light that's never to go out in the tabernacle. And then the Most High will be your light for forever. Let's go on reading to finish the thought from Tanchuma. Tanchuma goes on to say, Amar HaKadosh Baruch Hu Moshe, and the Most High said to Moshe, Amar livnei Israel, say to the children of Israel, Banai, my sons. Listen to this very carefully. Banai, ba'olam hazeh hayitim zkukim leor bet hamikdash. My sons, in this world you had need of the light of a mishkan. Okay? Umadlikim orot betocho. And you lit lights inside of him, or inside of it. Aval ba'olam haba, but in the world to come, bizchut oto haner, in the merit of that one light. In the merit of that one light, ani mavi lechem melech hamashiach, I will bring to you King Messiah. There's the royal speech that we keep hearing about splendor and heaviness and glory and honor. Shehu mashul laner, because he is as a parable, as an equivalent to a light, Now, also, Tanchuma looks at that comment with a connection to Psalm 132:17, and then we're going to look at a passage from the Brit Chadashah, and we're done. All right? Psalm 132:17. So Psalm 132:17 reads as following. It says, Sham atzmiach keren leDavid, and I will spring forth, tzamiach, plant, the branch, okay? There I will branch out, keren, a ray of light, leDavid. Arachti ner limshichi. I will extend out a light to my anointed one, or to my mishichi, limshichi. I will extend out a light to my Messiah, the one who he will raise, who will be called Tzemach, the plant or the branch from the stump of David. He's also considered to be a keren, a keren, or a ray of light. All of this now, you might say, well, that's nice little reading things or whatever. Let's take it home with a passage from the book of Revelation. Go ahead and make your way there while I make a couple of more comments here. Revelation chapter 21, verse 22. Revelation 21, 22. And I'm going to be reading it from of course, the Hebrew copy of the New Testament. But I want you to keep a couple things in mind. Adam fell in the garden, okay? He fell in the garden, and things went awry. Since that communication and that fellowship was broken, the Most High has been rebooting and rebooting. And it's failed. Why? Not because his plans fell, but because we failed. We fell, just as Adam fell. Adam and Chava in the garden. Okay, they fell. The next attempt was at Sinai. It failed. Why? Because of us. The next attempt to bridge, the failure happened because of the golden calf. Okay, on and on and on. And even the priesthood of Aaron, the priesthood fell. Why? Because the priesthood was full of mortal men who could stand and do the job, but their bodies became old and they gave out and they died. The book of Hebrews goes through all of this completely. They did not have an indestructible life. Okay? Let's see who the light is. Let's see who the writer of the book of Revelation says that the light is. And let's see if it falls in line with this commentary from Tanhuma that I just read you. A commentary from Tanhuma that says that the Most High would give us the light of the Mashiach. With that commentary that I read, again, this, yikes, knocked over my can. The commentary that was made, it said, again, it says, Haitim Sukukim, Haitim Sukukim Laor Hamikdash. You are in need of the light of a mikdash or of a tabernacle. The Most High don't need a building. Okay, he doesn't need a building. Okay, that's not the point. If we focus so much on the building itself, we lose track of what was intended. The intention was to repair, letaken, להתחיל קצת לקלקל ולתקן, to restore the relationship, to reboot and restore the relationship to the beauty that it had in Gan Eden. Okay, failure in the garden, failure at Sinai, failure with the priesthood, success in Yeshua the Messiah. Success in Yeshua the Messiah. Let's see if the writer of the book of Revelations agrees with Tanhuma. Okay, Revelation 21, starting at verse 22, reads as follows. Heichal lo ra'iti ba. John says, a temple or a tabernacle, I didn't see in it or in her. He's speaking of the city, of the Jerusalem, New Jerusalem. Ki heichala hu Yahuwah Elohim tzevaot vehaseh. Because her tabernacle or her temple is Yud He Vav He and the Lamb. Wait, it gets much better. Gets much better. Verse 23. It says, Veha'ir einena tzricha lashemesh. Okay, now it's reflecting again what we just read from Isaiah. What we read from Isaiah 60:19. It's reflecting Isaiah 60:19, which means they're one and the same things. Isaiah 60:19 was the prophecy. Revelation 21:22 is the fulfillment. Heichal lo ra'iti ba ki heichala hu. So Yud He Vav He and the Lamb. Yud He Vav He, the Elohim of legions, and the Lamb was the light. 23. Ve'ha'ir einena tzricha lashemesh. Okay, so the city did not need the sun. Did not need the sun. On your menorah or your Hanukiah, the cup is called the shamash. Shamash, almost the same word as shemesh. It comes from the Hebrew word lehishtamesh, to utilize or to use. So the shamash is the main lighting source that's used to light the others, okay? Shemesh, shamash. virtually the same word. So it's not in need of another lighting source. Why? Okay. Ve'layareach sheya'iruva. And it doesn't need the moon to illuminate her. Ki kavod, there's one of the words that was used to describe the clothing of Aharon and his sons. Do you remember? Lechavod uletif aret. Uletif aret. Ki kavod Elohim, the glory or the heaviness, the glory of Elohim, he'ir ota vehaseh hu menorota. Did you hear that? Vehaseh hu menorota. Because the glory of the Most High will light it, and the Lamb, he is her menorah. Can you see the picture? The menorah shows up in some of the weirdest places, it seems like, out of place, or it keeps popping up. The same thing about the oil. The oil has got to be pure. We read in, or we read in Proverbs chapter 6:23 that there is a parallel, or there's a relationship between the commandments and the lighting of the lights. Okay, and the lighting of the lights. How's the quality of your oil? Are you shining bright? Does the world know that you represent the Most High? Are you light? And are you salt? That's the question. What's the quality of your oil? What's the quality of your light? Like a moth to a flame, are you drawing people? Or do you look just like anyone else that's out there? Clothing, they say in some circles that it's the clothing that makes the man. Okay, in a lot of cases, this proves to be true. And as you saw in chapter 28 of this week's parasha, the community had a hand in dressing Aharon. Lechavod ultifaret, for glory and for splendor. The word glory, kavod, remember it means heavy. It carries that same connotation. You remember the commandment in one of the Eser Hadibrot. Okay, kabed et avicha ve'et imecha. Make heavy or honor your father and mother. If they're empty, make them heavy. What they're lacking, give it. Why? Okay? Lema'ani arichunya mecha, so that you lengthen the days of your life. That outfit that Aharon wore could not have been comfortable. It had weight on it, right? He carried the stones of the tribes of Israel on his chest, and he had a stone on either one of his shoulders. So he carried a heaviness and a weight, but it was for honor and for glory. And he was dressed in splendor, just like a king. Why? Because the coming Messiah will be both high priest, as he is in the heavenlies already, okay? And he's in the heavenlies making atonement for us and standing in the gap between us right here and right now in the temple that's eternal, that's made by hands. The temple or the Mishkan that's in the heavenlies that Moshe was commanded and shown the tavnit or the pattern in order to build the earthly one. As it is in heaven, so must it be on earth. Okay, we're pulling the two planes together. Yaakov's dream saw the ladder that extended from the earth to the heaven, pulling the two planes together. Yeshua is the ladder, he is the bridge, and he has Malachim Olim ve'yordim, ascending and descending up on him because he has opened the door, that very gate to the heaven. Yeshua, the Messiah, the gate of the sheep, the door, and the way. But the light, chiefly, he is the light. I hope this has been beneficial. I hope this has been edifying. And I'd love to hear back from you about anything. It's questions, comments, X, Y, and Z. Extra biblical writings, I believe, so many people have issues with them. And I think it's primarily out of ignorance. They're just, they don't want to discuss. They have an idea about who they think it came from and X, Y, and Z. We don't want to turn into or become the same way that the people that oppressed us. We don't want to become that way. And we don't want to miss out on blessings that can help illuminate not only the Tanakh, but also illuminate and bear witness with the Brit Chadashah. And as I shared with people earlier, I feel that this is one of the reasons that we have lost so many people who have abandoned the Mashiach as a whole. They're confused with Paul. They don't know if Paul is coming or going, but they throw the baby out with the bathwater. But little do they know, they run to an empty system of Judaism. It's beautiful and it has a lot of great tradition and halakha and valuable things. But in the end, without the Mashiach, it's broken. It's broken. It's missing an integral part, and that's the Mashiach. Okay? Masao matan, give and take a little bit. Yeah, so at any rate, as always, blessings upon you and your house. Yivarechecha Yehovah v'yishmarecha Ya'er Yehovah panav alecha v'yichunecha Yisa Yehovah panav alecha v'yasem lachem. Shalom. Look forward to seeing you all soon. Shine bright. Blind some people out there, you guys. Much love.